podcast.
Man, Mikey, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Will, glad to be here.
Man, so I got to be pretty honest. The biggest reason why I'm having you on is because your accent, man.
Perfect. Yep. Just here to sprinkle a little English accent into
the
podcast.
Yeah. I was like, man, how can we get more views on this thing? I mean, right now, already the demographic on my insights are like, I think 70% female. So I think this is going to take it up to like 90%.
Perfect. Anything I can do to help the brand, man, I'm here for it. I did learn recently that the British accent is one of the most trusted accents by
Seriously?
Americans. Yeah, it's like the #1 trusted accent.
Wait, but so a Nigerian accent is completely different, right?
Oh yeah.
It's not like a British accent. I'm trying to picture like it is completely different. The reason I'm saying that's because like you kind of sometimes people think of like the Nigerian prince and like all those stuff that goes on, you know what I mean? Like send me your bank account and I'm like, wait, is it the most trusted thing? Is it the most trusted? But no, real Mikey, I'm having you on because, man, I've gotten to know you now. We're going on about a year now or so, close to a year. And so you're a financial advisor.
Yep.
What's your actual title there?
Vice president technically of the firm, but outside of that, kind of in the day-to-day tactical work I'm doing with my clients, financial advisor is the right title.
There you go. So you're a vice president for Inspire Financial, and you help a lot of different people kind of in the same way that I do, with something that's really personal to them and can be really complex to a lot of people, but in a completely different way, you know. There's some good conversations that you and I have had that have helped me a lot, and I know that there's some questions that you have had on the mortgage side that you're like, man, what about this, right? So it's like kind of the same thing, but not really. So how long have you been doing that, man?
I have been in the industry exclusively for just about 5 years now, but always had interest in it. Like I knew back in college that this is what I wanted to do. It just took me a while to find the firm that I really wanted to partner up with and build a career with.
And what do you think kind of intrigued that in you?
Man, honestly, I think I wasn't really aware of money and financial planning and the right things to do with our finances until probably my freshman year in college. It was my goal to come over from the UK and play college basketball. And my family traveled a ton as we grew up. My parents had pretty good jobs, made good money. Little did I know they didn't always make the best financial decisions on the back end. So there was a lot of harder discussions that happened around my senior year in high school as I was trying to get over here to play college basketball. And I ended up at the end of my freshman year in a class called Personal Financial Planning. And for me, it was one of those eye-opening moments. And I just remember thinking about the content that I was hearing and realizing, man, if my parents would have had this type of information and insight and help, it could have been a game changer for the conversations we had, but I'm sure for, you know, all the other things that were causing any tension or stress in their marriage.
That's so good, man. And right now I'm actually, it's crazy that it took me this long, but started reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
Such a good book, man. I'm on chapter 2 right now. And one of the things that when you said, you know, little did I know they didn't always make the best financial decisions. Sure. And one of the things that stood out to me in this chapter, he talks about how, you know, the reason why rich people get rich is because they buy assets instead of liabilities. And it seems so simple, but two things, most adults, you know, what's an asset and what's a liability? And it's like, oh, that, you know, I know what that is, but people can't really pretty much simplify it and, for lack of better words, just dumb it down enough to truly discern of like, hey, is this a good purchase or not? Because it talks about how so many of the middle and poor class buy liabilities thinking that it's an asset. Right. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm with you 100%. And I think, you know, back to what you said at the beginning about doing similar things for our clients, it's really about simplification, because there is so much. We don't think of it as advanced or niche terminology because we deal with it every day. But to the average person that doesn't work in our world, they don't know what those concepts mean. Yeah. They may have a rough idea, but I think part of what we do is bring clarity to that situation and help them understand that the decisions that they're making actually have X, Y, and Z impacts. And part of that comes with helping them understand what these different words mean, you know. I think, too, there's just the other battle specifically with what you're talking about is a lot of times, especially in the world we live in now, the things that are actually liabilities give us that instant gratification itch.
Yeah,
So
like
the
a new car.
Right, exactly. So the things that are really worthwhile building long term, those wealthy assets, they don't always give you that immediate sense of satisfaction and gratification. So it's like, well, why wouldn't I do this instead? Because that feels good right now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And a lot of the times buying a fixer-upper to put up for rent that you could potentially make you 50, 100K in the next 8 to 10 years doesn't really seem like it's the most attractive thing.
Sure.
But man, something that you said, it's like that's what your job is to simplify things. You know, one of the things when people ask me, you know, what is one of the biggest attributes to any success that you've had, whether it's been a mortgage, just overall in life, but of course, my career is I'm a mortgage loan officer. So if I had to pick one thing, is communication. But then communication is such a broad thing, right? Communication, like, are you talking about like what type of communication? Are you speaking to a group of people? But it's like the best way that I could describe it is communication is by being available.
Yeah.
And then being able to simplify things. One of my favorite quotes is, humans are attracted to simplicity, but are repelled by confusion. And confusion is, once again, another word that it's like ugly and like I'm confused, right? I actually say that all the time. Like whenever I don't understand something, I tell people like I'm confused, like knowing like I don't understand like why you guys are even saying this. But sometimes we realize that like I was just doing a class with a group of realtors, and I was talking to them and telling them that you know, if let's say you, for example, and you're kind of in the finance world, you just go under contract and we say, hey, congrats, Mikey. You just went under contract. We're going to have to get a structural inspection. And then at that point, you know, this house might need some pier work and, you know, a couple pierings. And then after that, though, we can maybe negotiate that with the TRR with the seller. And don't forget, rates have gone up right now. So don't forget to talk to your lender about buying discount points. At that point, like you just went under contract on like the home of your dreams at that time, let's say, and you're super excited, but that confusion but it doesn't sound like, but to me it's not confusion because I understand all those terms, or the realtor understands that, but to you that's confusion, and that just took away your joy.
And that's what confusion. My head is swimming just listening to you say that.
And you could do the same thing
through the home buyer process.
And you could do the same thing. You could be like I'd be like, hey Mikey, you know, if we really want to confuse anybody that's watching this, it's like hey man, a recession's coming, this and that, like what are your thoughts on all of it? And then you dive deep in all of it, and then people are gonna be like, yeah, I'm not gonna watch this. And it's like, it's so crazy, man. So rich people looking at assets, and then middle to lower class people, liability. Let me ask you this: when do you think somebody is wealthy enough or has enough money to, let's say, indulge in some of these liabilities? Like, and then you can, you know, liabilities, guys, that's a big word to, you know, as much as most people don't want to admit it to most people, because it's like, let's describe some liabilities. We talked about a car. One of the things that it talks about in that book is like, hey, those comic books that you boys are reading, those toys are going to keep getting more expensive as the more money that you're making and everything. So what are some things that you kind of run into? Like your client calls you, says, Mikey, hey, I need to pull X amount in order to buy this. What are some of those things?
So in terms of determining when they're ready to be able to do
some of those
what are
things? Some of those liabilities?
Oh man, golly.
Or the top 3 liabilities that you see. I'm going to say
top 3 liabilities. I think a car is definitely in there. That's maybe the top one, right? And especially not making strategic decisions around why you have that vehicle, what it's purposed for. Are you using it for business miles or, you know, personal miles, those types of things. Outside of that,
you have a boat.
A boat is a big one, especially here in Oklahoma.
Yes, man. I'm like, you know, like I'll become friends with people on Facebook that I've done loans for, and then I'm just like, wait, how does this person have a boat? I know how much money they're making.
I've heard a very interesting thought on boats. Right, there's 2 great days in your lifespan as a boat owner: the day you buy it and the day you sell it.
Love that,
because people just don't want the headache of the maintenance and, you know, storing it and those types of things. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure you get to create fantastic memories on that boat with their family, but I'd rather just borrow my buddy's boat. as opposed to have the payment and the maintenance and those types of things.
The last thing that I can think of, unless you can think of another liability, is because when I think of a boat, I think of maintenance, and I hate maintenance.
Oh, yeah.
So the first time when we bought our first house, my wife and I, the house actually had a hot tub in the back. And one of my things that part of the contract was, I want you guys to take this hot tub out. Because I didn't want to deal with any maintenance.
Yeah.
Right. But that's another thing that it could be. It is a liability because at that point it's like, hey, I just want to do this just so that way I can, be kind of relaxed for a little bit after it ends of work. But you're buying these things for 5, 8, 10,000, and then you're selling them for 1 or 2.
Yeah. I think something along the lines of that, maybe the third one that we could throw in this category are. And I'm not against home upgrades.
Yeah.
But home upgrades for the sake of home upgrades, when there's not a practical application to this becoming potentially a rental property, or I'm specifically doing this much of an investment to increase my house value by X amount so that when I sell it, I have more of an equity play in it. That's probably where people get carried away. But I mean, we have things like HGTV. Yeah. People are watching these things all day long.
Yeah, I think the biggest one that I see on my end is pools, especially with how hot it is here. And a lot of people think this is an upgrade. I'm going to get my money back. Yeah. But it's like you're only right now with the amount of appreciation of how much homes are going up in value. It's probably the best time to get a pool, but still doesn't mean that if you're paying if you're paying $100K for a pool, that you're going to get those full $100K back, right? So, but before let's talk about like normal real estate world. Before COVID, if you were putting $100K pool in, you were lucky to see like half of that back in the value of the home. And that's another thing that people, try to talk themselves into just because it's sexy and attractive, right? So yeah, I'm calling you and I'm saying, hey, hey, I want to pull out 10K to put down on this Range Rover that I just saw. I got a race. I got a little race bump at work, and I can afford the payment.
Yep.
So I just need 10K. What's your answer? Typical answer, let's say.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will say, I hate to kind of back it out and say, each situation is unique, but it truly is, right? So first and foremost, I want to start with where we probably started the planning process, which is around their goals and their vision. If a certain lifestyle is a part of their financial goal and a part of their vision, then there's not too much I can say about that, right? Because at the end of the day, there's all these great things that they could be doing financially, but ultimately my role in their world is to help them experience the kind of life they want to experience from a financial standpoint. Gotcha. However, I will balance that with, we do have some general rules of thumb for how much you should be saving in terms of your gross your gross income, what that does to your take-home pay. So if we're saving a certain amount, right, each month, and I'm allowed to build the type of strategy we need to build to set you up for long-term success, and you still have the excess in your budget, even after we're saving the appropriate amount, that's more of a fluid conversation. But if we're not at a good emergency fund rate and we don't have money put back for X, Y, and Z, and now you're trying to add this extra liability, that's where I have a little bit more comfortability giving some pushback on maybe thinking through the right timing. Gotcha. This type of purchase. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, man. And one of the things that you kind of captivated me in by that answer was, and I've seen this firsthand, is that I truly, from other financial advisors that I've met, I don't believe that most of them take that approach of like, well, I do remember, Mikey, that you told me that you love to travel. Mm-hmm. So you do want to pull 10K out to fly to Italy or whatever, right? Because I feel like most financial advisors, and tell me if you agree or not, but are so quick to be like, dude, that's such a stupid idea. Because I would never do that.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? So, but that's in everything as well too. Yeah. Because for example, a couple of weeks ago, I did a bike race for 103 miles. It actually ended up being 110 miles. And I would tell people about it and they would be like, dude, that's so stupid. Why would you do that? I would never do that. So would you say that majority of the financial advisors are probably in that mentality just because they're so, honed in on dude, that's just a stupid decision.
I mean, I can't speak to, individual planning philosophies and things like that, but absolutely. I think we all have to battle looking at it through our personal lens.
Yeah.
Right. But one of the things that we're really diligent about on the front end is explaining to people that this isn't about just building and leaving a legacy. You also want to live a legacy.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
Like,
so good.
I have seen so many, I guess you could almost call them sub stories of people that were saving for retirement, right? This perpetually far away time. And then by the time they hit retirement and now they have the funds and the freedom to do all the things they were planning to do, maybe their health isn't there. Maybe it costs way more than they thought it would cost at this point. And so they've bypassed a lot of living their life for the sake of saving. So we have to find that delicate balance of, hey, if traveling with your spouse, for example, right? If that is something you do to invest in your relationship to keep you strong, to keep you on the same page, to keep you moving in the right direction, that's a valid expenditure of money over the course of a year. If we're still able to save and put back and hit these other longer term financial goals, I'm completely fine with you making that investment along the way.
Man, that is so good, because I try to stay kind of in the middle. And what I mean by that is I have a lot of friends and family members even that are on one end of this spectrum. And what I mean by that is they're either very bad with money to where if they were to win the lottery, they would probably be one of those people that go broke after a few days because it's gone, right? And that's kind of like the YOLO mindset, like you only live once, like, right? And then you also have those people that are very, very frugal. And then I'm just like, I know that you probably have like 6 figures in the bank. Like, why is, you ordering this great value or I don't, I'm trying, I can't even
soda
think.
with dinner once in a while.
Exactly. Like, why you live like that? Like, if you die today or tomorrow, you don't get to take any of that with you. So like, what is it all for? Right. Yeah. One of the people that comes to mind that, I honestly, like, I think he has a lot of wisdom and clearly he's been doing the right thing, but dude, Warren Buffett, my guy still lives in the same house that he's been living in the past 30 years. And this guy's worth billions of dollars. Yeah. And I heard something the other day that really put like, hey, that guy's a billionaire, that guy's a millionaire. Put that into perspective to me, because, when you hear like that guy's a billionaire, this guy's a millionaire, it's kind of all the same. They're all wealthy. But I heard this thing the other day that said, did you know that 1 million seconds is 11 days? It's a long time. Mm-hmm. But a billion seconds is over 30 years.
Yeah, I have heard.
So now I look at this and I'm thinking like Warren Buffett or like even George Kaiser, local guy here, like he's worth $11 billion. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, that guy has money to live 90 lives or something, right? So you have got people like that I'm like, dude, who cares if he has so much money? Like, he hasn't gotten to enjoy any of it. So my goal is every time is like, how can I make a middle decision? Mm-hmm. Meaning, am I being irresponsible? And am I being too like tight, like too frugal, where I'm not going to get to enjoy my life? Yes. So, what are your thoughts on like, let's just say your clients, let's say you have 10 clients, right? Yeah. Just to kind of, how many of those are kind of in the middle? How many of those are like, you're like, dude, we really got to rein these people back. What are your thoughts on that? I
think the vast majority of the people that I interact with probably come from more of the frugality and what I would even call a bit of a scarcity mindset mentality, right, around it. And I think part of that's because of the generation that raised us, and just the things that were either taboo to talk about in a financial realm or just weren't discussed at all in the household. So we had no awareness coming into, the working world about really how money worked, right? So I do think you have to balance, again, back to your idea of balance of what's important to you, right? So if for Warren Buffett, right, if it's not important for him to have flashy cars or live in certain places, that to each their own. Yeah. But I do think as humans, like let's just go back to how we're kind of built and created and those types of things. There's a habitual nature to humans. So if we do have to live in a certain, let's call it poverty mindset or scarcity mindset at one point in our life, because it really is hand to mouth, right? Resources are scarce in that season. Maybe we're fresh out of college. We don't have a ton of money, those types of things, right? Over time, those things become habitual in nature. And so what we have to kind of pause and reflect on is, hey, have I actually arrived at a point now where that mindset isn't needed for one anymore, and it's not healthy, and it's not serving the long-term vision and the legacy that I'm trying to create? I'd say the vast majority of people have, the people that come to see me, they have lived in that a little bit more scarcity environment for a while, and they're trying to figure out, now that money is coming in and they have a little bit more free cash flow, what are the best decisions to make? Because they're feeling that tension that you talk about of, I don't want to just be frivolous, but I feel like I'm at a point now where I can be doing some other things. I want to be smart, putting money back, building for the future, but also want to figure out, like, what's my travel fund look like? What does my fund money look like? And those are the kind of conversations that I'm in day out, especially with the more millennial demographic that I deal with. Yeah,
that's you hit a couple of things that made me think of pretty much like knowing when to take the guardrails off, right? And pretty much like one thing that I can think of is, like, I've had friends that have gone through the Dave Ramsey stuff because they had student debt and all this stuff, right? And now they're in a place to where they're doing well for themselves, still using the cash envelope method. And I'm just like, what? That doesn't make any sense to me, right? And then going back to kind of like what you said, like to each their own. But, you know, you have people like Jeff Bezos or that I personally think, but I mean, I don't know Warren Buffett personally, so who knows, maybe he doesn't really care about, you know, a nicer house or this or that. But one thing that I've heard, and I can't remember what amount of money it was, but a guy that he was like a billionaire, he said, man, once you reach, you know, this income to where you can literally buy whatever you want to, like, things are just like, there's no really joy in them on that, to where we go back to talking about an asset and a liability. Like, most people buy that liability because it brings that rush, that attractiveness. It's like, you know, and then so once you hit a certain number, which once again, we think of a millionaire and a billionaire, but it's really not that deep into the finances, to where at some point, like, you're like, dude, like, stuff's just stuff. And it's just like, I really want that pair of shoes, but guess what? They're going to be I'm not going to be wearing them after like 3 or 6 months. Right. It's just stuff. Yeah. So, so going back to, actually one thing I wanted to ask you, I never asked you. So, like, how would you compare the UK to the United States? Like, what are your thoughts when you came over?
Oh man. Okay. There's a lot we could get into here. Now, I will say my dad's American. Okay. So I traveled back and forth a lot as a youngster, so I was always kind of enamored by the American lifestyle.
Gotcha. I didn't know that.
And the glam, downtown city life, you know, all that. My dad's from Las Vegas, which is probably not a fair comparison, right? I'm going back to like my small city in the UK.
What would you compare your small city in the UK to here? Like,
honestly, the city I grew up in the UK was like the Tulsa of the UK.
Really?
Yeah. Derby. Americans would say Derby. It's Derby. Gotcha. Kind of a mid-sized city. Most people have heard of it, maybe traveled through it, but not always seen as a place to stop and hang out, and there's a bunch to do and see. So when I first got to Tulsa, I thought this place was a ghost town. Because like I said, when I would travel to the United States, all the action was in downtown. Yeah. Downtown Tulsa in 2009, there wasn't a whole lot going on, right? I think the city of Tulsa's done a great job making it more of an attractive place to be, especially for young professionals. But I knew, I won't say I knew. In 2009, when I arrived, I said, I got to be on the first flight out of here when I graduate.
You were out of here.
There's no way I could stay in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And look at me now. I'm a Tulsa resident. But I think some of the biggest differences, especially being in this portion of the country, is there's a lot of, I think, kind of natural skepticism and cynicism to British people, just a little bit more sarcastic, a little bit more cheeky and rude and those types of things. So coming to the Bible Belt here in Oklahoma, you know, I'm joking and poking fun at people and like, hey, sir, that's not very polite. And I'm like, oh, I'm just joking. Like, that's what I do with my friends. Like, you poke fun at your friends. So I think just getting used to a little bit more of that friendly facing, you know, jovial, get to know people just for the, you know, sake of getting to know people and be warm. That was a bit of a culture shock for me. Obviously, the food is completely different.
Same here. So you've heard my story that I've shared it, and man, coming here from Mexico, it was the food like just completely tastes so much different. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like, so what kind of food? Like for me, of course, it was like your rice and beans and like tortillas. Like what kind of food did you?
So I grew up, just running down to the local fish and chip shop.
Yeah.
So it was high quality fish. Now they obviously like battered it and covered it in salt and vinegar and all those kind of things. But just having access to fish and chips or, like a beans on like very basic meals, right? And not a ton of flavor or taster, but just real good, hearty meals.
And you went to like A&W, like Long John Silver's here or what?
Oh, dude, it doesn't even compare, man. It's so bad. It's so bad. But to ask you that, right? So there's a lot of, I would say, kind of at least Tex-Mex influence in terms of like food that's available here. How does it compare to the authentic Mexican food that you grew up?
It doesn't.
No?
Even
There's not
like
even like a restaurant around town that you would say that they're pretty close.
No, really, I wouldn't say that. I think that there are, and I've been here for so long that I think of, I compare the authentic now to your like, Chewy's or Ted's or that big Tex-Mex thing, right? When somebody says like, I'm going to go have Mexican tonight and they're going to one of those places.
They're going to Tex-Mex.
Yeah. So I kind of see authentic more of like your hole in the walls here in the United States now, but even the hole in the walls here in the United States are completely different than like the real stuff down there for sure. And so the food, and then is there any other big things?
Obviously you drive on the other side of the road.
Wow, I didn't see. That's one thing that I didn't even think about.
Drive on the other side of the road. So the driver's side of the car is on the other side of the car.
Were you driving out there? Like,
in
were you
UK
old enough?
Before I got it? Yeah.
So was that super? That would be super weird if I was like driving.
The first time I got in a car in the United States to drive, I was still on like someone's street. So I was driving down the street of that cul-de-sac on the wrong side of the road. And I didn't realize it until someone turned into the street and started driving right towards me. And
so you were literally heading.
I'm like, what's this idiot doing? He's driving straight to, and then I'm like, oh, I'm the idiot on the wrong side of the road. Oh my gosh,
that is crazy. So you come over here and you kind of fall in love with the financial side of things. And then, one of the things that you said at the very beginning, you said, if only my parents would have known what I'm realizing now, maybe things would have been different. But going back to those 10 clients that, let's say, just to get a good percentage on that, here's the thing is like anybody that lives in the United States knows about fitness, knows about eating healthy, and there's still a bunch of people overweight, right? A lot of people know a lot of different information. And one of my favorite books, I don't know if you read it, Compound Effect. He talks about how we live in such a get rich quick mentality type of era, or get abs without having to do people want something so fast and without having to do the work, that so many like you don't need any more information. You need some more doing. You need to actually do stuff with that information, because I can give you all the information that you want, but if you don't do anything with it, you're still going to be in the same spot. Yeah. So how many of the people that you say that you meet, I guess at this point, they might not even be clients, but what percentage, like you're given that information that you're like, I wish my parents would have known that, but they don't take that?
Man, I think it'd probably be pretty easy to say about 80% of them, but I give them grace on that, Will. And here's why I say that. One of my business coaches shared this concept with me, but he said, if you were to picture your mind, right? Like, your mind and your belief system is what controls your actions, right? So if you were to picture your mind and picture it as just like a normal circle, and then just draw a line halfway through that circle, right? So you split it in half. So now you've got two semicircles sitting on top of each other. Information goes into the conscious mind, which is the top part of that circle, that diagram, right? The only way, though, that we start actually operating and acting on that information is when that information is instilled long enough or it's repeated enough that we actually start to believe it. And that's the process of information moving from the top part of that circle to the bottom part. Once it's in our belief system, we operate from our beliefs. So that's why people will hear great information, they hear great insight, and they maybe make a change for a week or two, but because they don't stick with it until it's a belief and a habit, their actions never reflect. And so if our actions aren't reflecting, ultimately the results we get don't give us what we're after. And so that reinforces what we're thinking or believing. So I think part of my role in a client's world is not just to introduce new topics and ideas and financial concepts, but make sure the repetition and the reps and the automation of some of those things is happening in such a way that now it's becoming a belief and a habit, and the actions are backing all of that up.
Dude, that is so good. And that's the first time I've ever heard of that.
Okay.
And the first thing that made me think of, it's going to sound so silly, but just like yesterday or the day before, within the last 48 hours, I watched an older video of an interview of Kanye West.
Okay.
Right when he was taking off and he was like, and they were interviewing and they were asking him like, so how far, there has to be a limit to your belief, right? Mm-hmm. Like you believe that you're the greatest rapper in the world. Like, when does that stop? Like what's the actual limit to that? Oh. And then he says, if I wanted to be in the NBA, I would be in the NBA right now. That's how much I believe in myself.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a funny TikTok, funny video. But now that you said that, man, the reason it made me think of that is because I truly believe that that's where his success came from, and where so many people's success comes from, of truly believing, like waking up every single day and saying, I'm the fittest person, in this town. I am this. I am like prophesying that and truly believing. Yeah. People will think that you're crazy. Yeah. But that is what will get you there.
That's what gets you there.
Dude, that is so
Absolutely.
Crazy.
Absolutely. Because if you think about it, right, like the conscious mind, right, back to that idea, the diagram, you can accept or reject information. Like I could hear an idea or a new concept and be like, that doesn't really make sense. I'm not going to accept that. But your beliefs are so deeply rooted, you only accept that. You don't even realize you're accepting them, because it's just things that are so, it's like, this is who I am. This is what you would never say this is what I believe about myself. We just say this is who I am. But it's really just a collection of beliefs and ways that we look at the world that we just accept.
Yeah.
So if you were to tell yourself time and time again, I'm the fittest guy in Tulsa, there's no questions asked. Are you kidding me? Like I work out harder than anybody. Yeah. Right? It might sound a little bit silly at first, even to you, just to say something that bold. But if you repeated it time and time again, well, your actions are going to start backing it up, because you're like, well, if I'm the fittest guy in the world, then fittest guys get good night's sleep and they get great nutrition and they hit the gym and they do their ROM-WODs, right? Like and over time, it's like you may just become that guy because all of your actions are aligning with this belief statement that you're repeating over and over and over again.
Dude, that is so good, man. I'm just kind of mind blown a little bit right now. And it also makes me think about another reason of what I would attribute any success that I've had in anything. And it's this quote that I heard in a book that I read when I started as a mortgage banker. It was this book called The Mortgage Storm. And it was 16 chapters of 16 different mortgage bankers that were top loan officers in the entire nation. And each of them told their story of like, hey, this is how I started. It's not very easy. There's all this potential that you could become, good and have a good life and this, but like, this is where I started. Yeah. And one of them, this mortgage loan officer, he's still a loan officer. His name is JJ Masso. He said, rapid implementation equals success. The faster you're able to implement things, the faster that information will go to the other side. Yes. And then it'll help you be successful. Yeah. Right. So today I taught a social media class from what stuff that I've been learning. And literally what I told them, I said, hey guys, it's probably going to be a lot of info for you guys. Here's my challenge for you guys. Pick out 3 super basic things that you're going to do today. Yeah. And pick out 3 other things that you're going to do this month. Yeah. If you don't do that, you've wasted an hour and a half of your time this class. And in the middle, I said it again because people forget, like you said, the information. Yeah. And then literally at the very end, I said, hey, what is 3 things that you guys are going to do? And a couple of them started doing it. And I'm like, that's it. That's what's going to create success on that. People, including yourself, has asked me of like on social media and all this stuff. And it's like, dude, I barely know what I'm doing, but guess what? I'm implementing. Yeah. I'm implementing. Yeah. And that's what you have to do. But that is so good, man, because believing something is so powerful. I mean, I think that's when you can take it back to religion and everything. And it's like, you know, you hear of like Scientology and you know, all these cults that you're like, how, like, who would be dumb enough, right, for lack of better words,
Sure.
to, and I can say that because if you're probably not watching this because you're not allowed to, but like, who would be dumb enough to do that? But it's like, that's how powerful belief is.
Yeah, that's it, man.
That's insane, man. That was so
Now,
good.
here's something else I'll point out, which you maybe didn't even think about it. I saw your post. I think it was on one of your stories about the mortgage storm. And there's something that you wrote about that book. You said, I've read this at least once a year, every year since I've been in the business.
Yeah.
So not only was it a one-time thing where you heard these stories and you felt like you could relate, but you're continuing to expose yourself to these stories, and the repetition is what helps your belief. So by the time you read it the fifth or sixth time, you're like, I'm no different than that guy or that girl.
That's so true, man.
They had a crazy, they didn't have like a leg up when they got started. So if they can do it, why can't I do it?
That's so true,
that's
man.
Just the start that you need to get the ball rolling.
That's so true. And I heard that from Darren Hardy. Actually, I started reading books over and over again because it goes back to the information thing, right? How many people that do you maybe know that they're constantly reading books, but then you're looking at yourself and you're like, dude, like, is he really reading them? Or like, because he's not really improving, right? He's not standing out like in all these things. And he talks about that. It's not about how many books you read, but in I'm all about simplifying everything. And what it makes me think of any time that we have kind of created like a path to like the home ownership or like the process. And it's like, you get pre-approved, you find the house, you look for the house, you find the house, you get under contract, and it just kind of gives you the path. So it's like, you read the book and you get the information, then that information is going to translate to you implementing into your life. Once you implement it to your life and it becomes a habit, it will compound into that, like, you know, all about compound interest and all that stuff. So it will compound into you achieving your goals and becoming that better you.
Yeah.
Right. But the thing is that sometimes it's so like, it comes and goes whenever you read a book or even watch a movie or this or that. Like, my wife last night went to watch the new Elvis movie, and and it was a 3-hour movie, and I can guarantee you she probably forgot like 80% of it. And that's everybody else, just because it's like, I mean, how many times have you watched a movie and then you watch it again and you're like, wow, I don't remember that.
Yeah, don't remember that part.
Dude, and then
unless it's a movie you love and you watched it a ton as a kid, I'd tell you the whole script.
Exactly. And dude, the last thing I'll say, and then I'll ask you one last question, but talking about movies, one thing that I heard that was so powerful is think about movies and how if you watch it, you're going to miss a lot of stuff. The next time you watch it, it's you're going to miss, less things, and then realize that there's things that you missed the time before. And then, again and again and again. Well, think about life. Once you pass it once, you can't ever go back. So how many things are we missing? Yeah. How many people are we, missing the opportunity on connecting because we didn't pay attention?
That's good.
And it was just that kind of really made me think of like, man, like you have to be more intentional in everything that you do. So, absolutely. Man, thanks so much for coming. I really appreciate you. And I want to ask you one last thing.
Yeah.
I don't want to put an exact age because I want this to be hopefully an impactful answer, but think of like anywhere between an 18 to a 25-year-old, let's say, that what is like the best advice that you could give them overall?
That's a really good question. I think the best advice to give to an 18 to 25-year-old, and this is going to sound like a blanket statement, but I want to unpack it a little bit once I say it, is to invest in yourself before you worry about investing in the market or anything, crypto, whatever it might be. Invest in yourself first. I heard from one of the guy that was over the grad program at Oral Roberts when I was there in grad school. He said, your 20s are for learning, your 30s are for earning, and your 40s are for returning. It's not that you don't do all of those things in each of the decades, but in your 20s, you really get this opportunity to just glean a lot of wisdom and insight and figure out what is it that I want to do? Where am I going to carve out my niche for really generating revenue in the next decade? And then once you've had that success and you've done it for yourself, it's about now helping others do the same and building up the next generation, right? So I think in that window of 18 to 25, you figure out what it is that you like, what drives you, what ignites a passion inside of you. That's an investment in yourself to figure out what you don't want to do as well as what you do want to do. And I think once you start to figure that out, it's finding the right people to mentor you and coach you and hold you accountable to certain things. That's another investment in yourself. If you can have side hustles and side businesses in college or that type of age, like that's fantastic. Try those things out. But figuring out what it is that drives you, what excites you about work and vocation, and then having people that can coach you and you can learn from their mistakes, I think that's the most valuable thing you can do in that window of time.
That is really good, man. And I know I've said this before, and I'll say it again because it aligns exactly with what you said. You're a financial advisor. I'm a mortgage advisor. And if you look at our field, we're not the only ones.
No.
There's thousands, hundreds of thousands, so many of them. And then you look at the top 10%, the top 1%, and then you're like, man, they're way ahead of the pack between everybody else. Why is that? And one thing that I heard that truly just like clicked in my head, and it was so many people, no matter what they do, they know what they do. Mm-hmm. They know how to do it, but only the top people know why they do it. Mm. And you can't ever find out your why until you invest in yourself.
Yeah. That's powerful.
Man, thanks again for coming, bro.
Thanks for having me, Will.
Appreciate you, bro. Sounds good.